What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. We're on episode 77, and we are coming to you on a beautiful, very early Saturday morning.
Yes.
We're back in our element as far as time goes.
I was going to say, it feels good to be back on a time schedule.
Yeah, because before, we talked about it last couple of weeks, we were going in the evening with a few mornings sprinkled here and there, but now we're back to the, 4:45, 5 o'clock a.m. recording time, which is perfect for both of us on a Saturday.
Yes, absolutely.
You have a busy Saturday planned?
Yes, very busy. Very busy. Going to a pretty unique training down at one of our local fire departments. A guy named Jeff Stroop is teaching basically a basic engine operations training. I don't want to call it basic because from what I understand, it's going to be pretty in depth. But it's going to be a fun time, and it's going to be cool to get to interact with all the area, not all the area, but a lot of the area departments, paid and volunteer. So
cool. How long does that last?
It's going to be 8 hours, 8 to 4. So it's going to be a long time. And then after that, my niece's birthday, so we got a birthday party tonight.
Gotcha.
So it'll be a long day.
Yep. And then I feel like when I tell people that I have long days ahead, that makes me feel good. I feel productive.
Yeah.
Like when I get home late at night after a long day of doing whatever, most of the time it's a work-filled day, but I feel like that's the most productive. Kind of like I talked about the other day, I said that I can go to bed happy and satisfied with myself, because I feel like the days that I don't do that, where I kind of lie around, even though it's generally you get to the point where some of those are necessary. Like you need those days where you are kind of low key and take your foot off the gas and stuff for rest and recovery. But mentally, it's hard to do that. Physically, it's easy.
Yeah.
Like to go home and go to sleep or whatever in an early afternoon if you get off of work early, or stay sleeping in on a weekend if you have the opportunity to do so, or whatever. But mentally, it's hard.
Right. It's actually funny. One of your kids was at my house last night. Well, he's doing some work for me to raise some money for the summer and stuff. And we were just talking. Me and his dad were just talking on the porch, and he was standing there. And he said something. I can't remember what he said. Now I should remember because I was supposed to ask you about it. But I said, I'll ask Charlie in the morning. He's like, oh, when are you going to see him? I was like, we're recording at 4:45, so. He's like, geez, does he ever sleep?
No.
I was like, no, we don't. Neither one of us sleep enough, I don't think.
Which the ironic part about that is how often
we talk about sleep.
We talk about the importance of sleep, and then we don't get much. I feel like, though, honestly, I get sufficient amounts.
That's what I told him, too.
I get enough to function, and then when you couple that with good nutrition and an overall healthy lifestyle. I'm not saying you don't need as much, but you're able to manage it probably a lot better than normal people, so to speak.
I agree.
How are you coming on your goals that we talked about last week, or goal singular? Because to catch people up to speed, for those that don't know, we were talking, and I think that what sparked the discussion was talking about how I felt that I wasn't doing enough goal setting as far as short-term goes.
I agree.
I was doing long-term stuff. And I wanted to come up with just something random, and then I had this spark in my brain that told me that a good short-term goal would be to work on a straddle split, which is like a sideways split. I have no idea why. I wanted it to be something performance-based, something health-based, something involving my body that I could set a goal for. And I thought that would be kind of a cool and unique thing to attempt. So that's what I went with. I mean, I didn't have any prior training with it. I, wouldn't consider myself an overly flexible individual by any means, but I thought that was neat. And so I said that the deadline was going to be July 4th of July, and I'm going to work on that ideally every day. I'm going to have to work on it every day if I have any chance at getting close to it.
You and me both.
So what was your goal? Refresh our listeners who, maybe forgot or possibly didn't hear.
So mine was same thing, July 4th. You said you picked the 4th of July for yours, and it sparked an interest from me because my first 5K ever was on the 4th of July in 2019. And if anybody that's listened to the show knows how much I really thoroughly enjoyed running 5K. So I haven't did one since end of 2019, November. And I was like, that's cool. Let's just do that. I'll pick that because I want to start running again. I've been talking about it for months, and no better way to do it than to make get to it, right? So I picked this. I wanted to do the same 5K that was my first one, but they canceled it for this year for COVID. So I'm still gonna find one, right? We'll find one somewhere. But yeah, that was it. I want to run a 5K in like a mediocre time, like not the slowest, not the fastest I ever did, but like what we say, 42.
Mm-hmm.
So 42 minutes will be the desired time.
That's awesome.
We'll see.
So are you training for it daily then?
Or
trying. Almost daily?
I mean, with a newborn, nothing can be considered daily anymore. But yeah, man, actually, me and my daughter went for a walk twice this week, and then I went for one by myself, and then I also trained this week too. So
cool.
It seems to be going all right. The walking pace is right around 16.5-minute miles. So 17-minute miles, I think, is what it was. So I think when I start adding in jogging in the next 2 weeks, we might come down into that, 15 to 16-minute miles. So we'll see. We've got almost 2 months left, month and a half.
Yeah,
I think we'll be all right.
Just under 2 months.
Yep. So I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as far as like progressing with it goes. I've been working on my splits, pretty high frequency, so try to do it at least a little bit every day. Obviously, with the things that I do, it's not like I always have time to be able to dedicate a large volume of time to stretching. I can't, unfortunately, I can't sit in the gym for an hour at a time and go through a thorough battery of stretches, but I can find time to do it every day, regardless of where I'm at or what I'm doing. So I don't think that, I don't have time today was a poor excuse. I even talked to you earlier and said, hey, I forget what day it was, but we were texting back and forth, and I said that I had a confession to make that I didn't stretch in the morning. I didn't stretch thoroughly in the morning as part of my training, which I typically do. So I said that I was going to rectify that in the evening and make sure that I focus on it later on in the day, which I did. So I feel like with stretching, in gosh, how many different, areas of life can you bring this into? But I feel like stretching is going to be best served just as a product of consistency.
Agreed.
Like if you're doing it consistently, it doesn't necessarily have to be for an hour. It doesn't have to be, a half hour or whatever. It can be 5, 10, 15 minutes at a time. And you're probably going to reap some benefits there and some progress. However, I would also say that stretching there's probably a direct correlation with the amount you do and the return on investment, like the results you get. Sure. Right. Now, you can't really say that about everything because there's a point of diminishing returns, which I guess with static stretching, there's a point of diminishing returns with anything. Anything that you do too much can be a negative. But stretching is one of the ones that's kind of far away from that. Most of the time, the more you stretch, the more flexible you're going to get. Like when you talk about strength training, the more you lift, the stronger you're going to get to a point. Right. Then you start tapping into the recovery hole that you can't dig yourself out of, and your nervous system gets taxed, and you have higher nutritional demands that you can't meet, or whatever it is. There's going to be a point where things are going to start to go downhill. But with stretching, I feel like for all intents and purposes, we could say that you can't really overdo it. Again, I give the disclaimer that you can, but for most people, it's going to be difficult. So over the next 2 months, or about just under 2 months, I'd like to really increase the amount of time that I spend doing it.
Yeah,
push
the envelope. So.
Sure. And if I have to compromise something else, that's okay. If I have to make my strength training or my lifting, my workouts a little bit shorter in order to give me more time to stretch, I'm okay with that because that's the short-term goal right now.
Right.
And I want to probably, I don't want to overstate this because it's not like that big of a deal. It's just a silly goal for no reason whatsoever, but I wanted to kind of be a role model in that regard because we always talk about prioritizing based on your goals, and people will say, I didn't meet my goal because X, Y, and Z happened, or because I had this pop up, or because I had this other obligation. And one of the other things is I told you that generally I tend to pull from myself when I bite off more than I can chew.
Right.
So if I have too many things going on, I'm always going to pull from my plate. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to pull from other people's plates just to make sure that I have enough time to stretch, but that's something that I set out to do and I have a goal, and I'm not going to detract from that time that I spent allocated towards that goal. I'm going to make sure that I stick to it.
Would it be fair to say that you could also add time into your stretching routine throughout the day by doing dynamic stretching while your athletes are stretching for their workouts?
Which, funny you say that, because that's exactly what I've been doing.
That's kind of what I figured.
Yeah.
Whenever because you have like that 15, 20 minutes before every workout with each person.
Yep. And I talk to them about it. I say, like, I'm not going to waste this time. If you guys are doing a thorough warm-up for 20 minutes, which incorporates mostly dynamic movements, and there's some mobility work that we do within that context too. Instead of just watching you do it, I'm going to do it with you.
Right.
And so I, do that a couple times a day. Not every single athlete
right.
do I do it with, but regardless, most of them, when they come in the afternoons and evenings, I'm doing
right
all the dynamic and the mobility work with them. So I guess it's adding to the total volume or time that I get to dedicate to stretching. So
that's a nice way to be able to incorporate your goal setting into their day.
I was a lot further away than I thought I was too, by the way.
Really?
Not that I had any delusions of being close to being able to do a straddle split, but I was really, really far away. And that was kind of a wake-up call for me to say, like, holy cow, man, I got to get into this, because, I'm starting to already demobilize myself, and I'm old enough where age is playing a factor, but I'm too young to use age as an excuse to be playing a factor, if that makes sense.
I get it.
Because we talked about that at the gym. A person there and myself, we were talking the other day about how the age that people use, or the age that people use age as an excuse, continues to get younger and younger. Like, we'll have, kids that are in their early 20s come in and say that they can't do certain things, or they get out of the bed because they're in pain. And I feel like not just in your 20s, but even your 30s and 40s, and to any conceivable age, you shouldn't be waking up in pain every day.
Right.
And if you are, you're doing something wrong and it needs addressed.
Yeah, I'm going to throw him under the bus. So your athlete that I was talking about earlier, he made this statement, and that's what I was going to talk to you about. He made this statement that he can tell he's getting older because his knee's hurting after he works out. And I said, you are 14 years old. Relax.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be a crippled old man at 20 if you think you're getting old now.
Now, I guess there could be some product of growth going in there.
Yeah.
It could be just a manifestation of, growing pains. I'm not sure on the exact physiology of growing, but I know that with the growth plates expanding at a rapid rate, a lot of people get
achy and stuff.
Yeah, sure. So maybe that's part of it, but no, I hear that all the time from different people, and
young kids and stuff.
And then people who avoid simple tasks because they're difficult to do. Mm-hmm. So, a good example in the gym would be squatting. That's the one that I hear most frequently, is people that say, well, I don't squat because, I have bad knees, or I don't squat because my back hurts, so I don't squat because of this and that, which I'm not saying that you need to lock yourself into a paradigm where you feel that any exercise is a non-negotiable, but I feel like, in my opinion, a barbell squat or some variation of a barbell squat for a performance athlete, or even for people, health purposes and just physique enhancement, that's probably as close to a non-negotiable as you're going to get.
Yeah, because it's almost full body.
Yeah. So, and I think that sometimes, in my estimation, people have this avoidance of a squat because it's difficult, but they can center it around the excuse of something hurting. And maybe that is a legitimate concern. Maybe every time you squat, your knees hurt, or every time you squat, your back hurts. Well, anything short of some type of orthopedic impairment, whether it's congenital or injury related, that shouldn't happen.
Right.
If you don't have an injury, or a specific injury or birth defect, or something that's restricting either a range of motion or the way load is placed on a joint or whatever, that shouldn't happen. So if you're saying that squats are hurting my knees, then there's either a problem with your squat or a problem mechanically somewhere down the line where something's too tight, something's not mobilized enough. Maybe it's a lifestyle thing. You're sitting all day the wrong way or incorrectly or whatever. So I think that you can kind of go through and itemize and problem solve your way through that shit.
Right. I agree, 100%, 100%. Um, I was gonna say something about goal setting. Oh, so like with our goal of like your goal for the split, you have like a plan, a roadmap to get there,
Hmm.
and with mine, like the 42 minutes to do a 5K, I was kind of shot from the hip on that, to be honest. I think I can do 42 minutes. If I had somebody to pace with, like somebody I know could do 42 minutes, I think I could do it right now.
Hmm.
But it's going to take every bit of the 2 months for me to get the the ability to pace myself again
There's
to
a
get
lot
there.
longer of a learning curve for your goal than for mine because you have different stages where it's, I guess you could say, stages of prep where you're walking initially, and then it's faster walking, and then it's jogging, and then it's understanding. I don't want to say
When to do
understanding
what?
because you understand it, but relearning when to do what and
Yeah,
how to pace and all that
right.
stuff again. So it's kind of retooling your body to how it used to be. Whereas for me, I stretch as far as I can, and that's it.
Hmm.
And then I hold that as long as I can, and then I do it again and rinse and repeat. So the progressive overload just comes of a product naturally of me continuing to do that.
Right.
Whereas if you continue to walk, it's not like you're going to get faster. There's going
Yeah.
to have to be
You got to
a
push the
specific
envelope.
uptick that's within your control.
Yeah.
Whereas the split, the time I allocate towards it is in my control. But going further, I can only go so far. I mean, mine is kind of like not necessarily a concern of pain, but just physically cannot go down anymore.
Right.
So my goal is a lot easier in that sense than yours, I would think.
And that was one thing I didn't like talk about when the goal was. I mean, I have the tool at my disclosure any time, any day. I can call my dad and he'll write me a program that'll get me there in 2 months. Like it's his job. That's what he does. I want to do it on my own. I don't. I don't. I want to. I want to rely on what he's taught me already, what we've learned already,
Uh huh.
and make it happen for myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I didn't talk about that because I didn't realize that that's what I wanted to do until I was out on the track the first night, and I was like, "Yeah, I want to do that." You know, because I was about to call him and say, "Hey, what should I do?" I'm like, "No, I think I'll just do it on my own."
I think there's a little bit more gratification in that when you do
Agreed.
something completely independently.
Agreed.
One thing that I have thought about in the past is wanting to do a prep by myself.
Yeah.
So every bodybuilding show I've ever done, I've worked with a coach, which anybody familiar with the bodybuilding industry knows that that's very, very common practice. In fact, it's very rare, at least from the group of people that I have associated with, which, to be fair, is a very, very large number of people in that industry. But that's commonplace.
Right.
Almost everybody works with a coach to some degree.
Well, like we've talked about before, every coach has a coach.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
But I've always toyed around with the idea of doing a prep on my own. The only thing that creates hesitancy in my brain is the fact that I know my flaws, I know my strengths, and I know my weaknesses. I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm not good at. One of my flaws is the overreactive piece, where I'm an extremist when it comes to my own body. So I feel like if I needed to upregulate my cardio, I wouldn't be able to do so in moderation. And I know that. And I need someone to be able to tell me that's too much. The funny thing is, it's kind of a scenario where, kind of how you have somebody who can give dating advice to everybody, but their relationships are a disaster.
yeah.
Essentially, that's where I'm at with it, where I can obviously give this advice to people because I do it all the time. But I also, when it comes to me, there's that little bit of a disconnect where it's too overwhelming for me.
Right. Well, and you're like you said, you're hypercritical of yourself.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So it's whatever you if you were to see what you see in yourself, you see in me, right?
Uh-huh.
It's easy for you to add up the problem to fix the solution for my problem. But when it's your problem, you're like, wait a minute, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. But you add in 45 steps, it could be the exact same thing.
And there's emotional investment there.
Right.
Not that I'm not emotionally invested in my friends and my clients' progress, but there's a higher degree when it's yourself.
Yeah.
So I can take
Should be
the bias. I can't take the bias emotion out of it.
That's the word I was looking for. Like the being the bias. Yeah.
So speaking of goal settings, there's a couple things that I want to talk about when we get back from our commercial break. They're very, very cool. A few of the things you already know, but there's one big thing that I kind of wanted to talk to you on the phone the other day about, and we didn't get the opportunity to make that phone call. So now I'm actually happy. I think that everything happens for a reason, because now I get to discuss it on air. So I get to hear kind of your initial thoughts in front of an audience, which is going to be really cool. Yeah, so let's go to a commercial break, and then we're going to talk more when we come back.
As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram, and order your delicious baked goods today, because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well.
And we're back from our commercial break. All right, so before we went to break, wanted to talk about a couple of cool things that are in the pipeline, and it kind of falls in line with us talking about our short-term goal setting. So foremost, we talked last week about how Shannon is going to be back on the show for the third time. Second kind of round of interview, but third time she's been on the show, because we had a 2-part series with her earlier in our podcast infancy, I guess, because we were still kind of new at the time, or new-ish compared to now. We have a couple other people that we've reached out to that have shown interest in the podcast that are going to be really, really awesome guests, and don't want to divulge information too soon in case things fall through. I don't want to be that guy that makes big, obnoxious claims about who we're going to have on and how it's going to be, and then eventually they fall through, and then I look like the bad guy or the person who kind of blew it out of proportion, which hopefully that's not going to be the case, but we have a couple cool things in the pipeline. And then additionally, I have the story that I, again, was going to call and tell you about earlier and didn't get the opportunity to do so, so I'm going to take a few minutes to do this now.
Copy.
So I'm at home 2 nights ago. So not last night, Friday night, but Thursday night. And I got a text from one of my friends, who, coincidentally enough, a friend of the podcast, Josh Morosi, who is a multi-time, I don't even know how many world records he has at this point.
Was it like 13 or something?
I believe it was 13 world records. That might have even been just specific to the squat, but he's got a huge, huge laundry list of world records. Pound for pound, arguably one of the greatest powerlifters to ever live. He is a friend of mine, and we had him on the show talking about what it takes to be world class and what it takes to be in an elite level. And for anybody that knows Josh, knows that he lives like that 24/7. Everything he does in a professional manner and at an elite level. Like, to give just a little anecdote that kind of puts it into perspective for you. A couple months ago, I got a random text from Josh, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow morning? Do you want to go for a run with me?" And I said, "Yeah, well, Josh," and he knows that I'm not much of a runner, which is exactly why he reaches out to me to do these things. And I said, "Well, I have a speed class that I teach at 8 in the morning, because it was a Saturday night, so going into Sunday morning, Sundays where I do my speed group training. I said that I would have to be back pretty early." He said, "Okay, well, we can just get up super early and go for a run and then come back, I said, "Okay, what time should I meet you? 6 o'clock, that'd probably give me a little bit of drive time back," because he was back home in his hometown, which is probably about half hour from where I'm at, maybe a little bit longer, so not very far.
Right.
But I accounted for some drive time. And he said, "Oh, no, we're going to have to go a lot earlier than that." And I said, "Well, why? How far and where were we going to run?" He wanted to do 13 miles.
Yes.
Which is half marathon. And I told him, "Josh, there's no way. I can't do that." And then, of course, he gives me the cliche spiel about how I need to push myself and accountability and how the Chasing Dreams podcast stands for for goal setting and achieving the unachievable and all this stuff that he guilt trips me into conviction here with it.
So how was your half marathon?
Well, unfortunately, I couldn't do it because the time would be too early for us to be able to do it and me still make it back by 8, only because it was already in the evening or the nighttime when he texted me about it.
Go to sleep and stuff.
And I explained to him that this wouldn't be a question of pushing myself or want to. It would be a question of just physical inability to go 13 miles.
Right.
Like if you've never done it, there's no way your body could possibly hold up and be able to do that.
Right.
And then I told him, all that's going to do is slow you down to quite literally a walking pace, which is not going to benefit you at all for what you're trying to do.
Right.
So this just speaks to the extremist level that Josh always goes to with everything. It's completely over the top. I would argue completely unnecessary all the time with everything that he does, which is exactly why he's a world champion and I'm not. That's exactly how he's put together. I remember a time that Josh and I lifted together, and it was the first time, at least that I can recall, that he and I actually had a workout together from start to finish, not just came across each other at the gym or what have you. And it was a squat workout. Again, Josh, pound for pound, one of the greatest squatters to ever live and has, multiple world records. Josh and I had this squat workout where we worked up to heavy singles. So we did sets of 3, 2s, and 1s, very low rep, essentially, and got to the point where we maxed out as heavy as we could go. We did a ton of volume. The whole process took us upwards of probably an hour and 15 minutes of just squatting, which is hellacious in and of itself. After that, he says that he wants to do some volume work with squatting. And I said, volume work? We just squatted for an hour and 15 minutes. But he wanted to do some higher rep stuff. And I thought, okay, I'm thinking sets of 8 or 10, maybe 185, 225 with what I would consider lighter-ish weight.
Let me guess. So he went full Goggins and did sets of 20.
No, even worse. We did 225 for a set of 100. So you had to rest pause it. So you would do 225 as many times as you could, rack it, catch your breath for 30 seconds, unrack it again, as many as you could, rest for 30 seconds, as many as you could. You had to do that all the way to 100.
I'd vomit.
It was the worst thing physically in terms of lifting in the gym, the worst thing that I've ever been through in my life, and it's not even close.
Yeah.
Just the cramping that was going on in my lower back, not injury pain, but just cramping from complete muscular failure. My legs were spasming and giving out. I was outside vomiting my brains out. They have this big tire that they do tire flips at the gym that we trained at, and I was outside sitting on the tire, projectile vomiting. And then afterwards, he comes outside and wants to do sled pushes and sled drags. It was the worst workout I've ever done in my life. But again, just another quick story to kind of get you into his frame of mind and how he is.
Right.
So he texts me on Thursday night, 2 nights ago, and says, "Hey man, what are you doing?" And immediately you think, "Oh no."
I was gonna say, "Oh no."
There's no escape.
Right.
What is he gonna get me to do? Which is hilarious because I feel like sometimes I'm that person. I'm the demon that hides under the bed to make you do stuff you don't want to do and scare you. He's under my bed. He's the demon for me. So he texts me, and I thought, oh no, this isn't good. Because either something's wrong or something's going to be wrong when he tells me what he wants me to do.
Right.
So I texted him. I said, nothing, man. What's up? I said, I'm free. Or he asked if I was busy or whatever. I said, I'm free. So he calls me and immediately starts on the podcast. He goes, "Hey, you know how the Chasing Dreams podcast stands for? Obviously chasing your dreams and always pushing yourself to the limits and achieving the unachievable and going above and beyond the extra mile." And again, starts throwing out all the cliche stuff that Josh normally throws out when he's going to guilt trip me into doing something completely asinine. And I'm like, oh, here it comes. And I said, yes. And he goes, well, I got an idea for your podcast.
Oh, boy.
And I said, all right, Josh, what is it? He goes, so there's a Spartan race coming up. He's like, it's in Garrettsville, Ohio, which isn't that far from you guys. He's like, I have I guess apparently he bought tickets or something and he's going to create a team or whatever. I don't really understand the dynamics of that, but he said, you got to do it with me. I said, okay, Josh, you need to paint this map for me. I understand what a Spartan race is. Justin's talked about it on air, but I don't understand the degrees or the levels of it. I know that it's an outdoor race, and I know that there's obstacles involved. I said, you got to kind of paint the picture a little bit clearer. You need to expound on this idea before I commit one way or the other. So apparently there's 3 races that are being held in this area.
Isn't it the trifecta?
Potentially. That's probably what it's called, where it's one race on one day and the other 2 on the next day. I think one's a 5K, one's a 10K, and the other one's
that's a half marathon.
Yeah. And he wanted me to do the half marathon one. And I told him, well, let me look at these other ones first.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not a question of can I push myself? I don't know if physically I would be able, or I'll even throw out that, even mentally able to do it. I said, secondly, in regards to these obstacles, you got to, again, paint the picture for me. What do these obstacles look like? Because I don't know if we've mentioned this on air, but I am deathly afraid of heights. Like,
are you really?
Oh, terrible, dude. Like, absolutely terrible. To the point where, like, I can't go on balconies, like, even close to railings. Like, I will physically lock up, and I'll shake, and my body won't move. I have to be drugged if we're flying anywhere. Like, I cannot go on roller coasters or rides that are high above the ground. Like, I can't even go on the roof of a house. It makes me terrified.
So, sidebar, you're not going to jump out of an airplane with me next year?
No, truly, I would have a heart attack. I would go into cardiac arrest, or I would faint, or there would be something internally that would shut down for me, almost as a fight or flight response.
Right.
Like a protective mechanism where I would either go into cardiac arrest because of, heart rate elevation, or I would just pass out.
Right.
So I told him that some of these obstacles that I would have to scale, I don't know if I could, again, not a question of if I can talk myself into doing it. Like, my body will see something, and I just won't be able to go up above the ground if it's that high. And he told me that there's, like, I think he said there's punishment, so to speak, or an alternative thing that you can do at each obstacle, like 25 burpees or something, just to overcome the obstacle and then go on to the next one. So we talked about this, and I said, Josh, all right. I said, how long do I have to prepare? Because then that's, I feel like, a realistic question. If you're going to be doing something you've never done before, you would want to know what the preparation time is to get ready for this. And Josh told me, oh, it's less than a month away. And my response, quite simply, was, of course, Josh, I hate you.
I hate you.
Like, because there's no way out of this.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of those guys.
He's trapped you in a corner where you're physically able to do it, like the actions.
Yeah,
so,
like I can show up at the race and perform. Like, I can't perform well, but
doesn't matter.
I can get my body to that location at the starting line and go.
Yeah.
So he's backed me into a corner that, for all intents and purposes, is going to be impossible to get out of. So I committed, and I said that I have a couple things later on in the month, in early June, that I need to account for. I said I'm not sure on those specific dates of those obligations. So I did kind of give myself an out in the sense that I didn't want to commit to it fully. I said I would commit to it fully if these pre-scheduled things do not fall on those dates.
Right.
I will do it.
Yeah, because I think you have a guy with a show coming up in June, right?
Yeah, possibly. We're looking at a couple different dates for a couple different people, actually, but there's potential there. Also, I have a friend visiting from New York City, and I have a couple other things in the pipeline as far as that are time sensitive.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that those don't fall on the particular dates. But if they don't, I told him I would go, and he's trying to convince me to do all 3, which will not happen.
Right.
There's no way.
There's no way.
But I'm going to try one of them. He told me that I could recruit athletes for bonus points. I don't know what bonus points. It might be like Whose Line Is It Anyway, where they make up the points. But I get bonus points if I recruit some of my athletes.
I have a couple in mind. Garrett, for sure.
Yeah.
He'd be fun to watch do it.
The only problem with Garrett is the ACL now.
Oh yeah.
So unfortunately, he wouldn't be able to participate. But regardless, I have some in mind that would enjoy it. So he sprung this on me. I guess I'm doing a Spartan race then.
I want to do one so bad. That's like it's not a short term goal for me because it's gonna take time. Because like I'm physically just not in the shape to do it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just not possible. I don't think I've been in this whole journey like not the yo-yo, but the help me out here, the peaks and valleys of this journey. I don't think I've been in the shape at all to do one.
And I don't think that that's an excuse. I think that's just like realism at its finest.
Yeah. So, but like that's a huge goal of mine is I want to do the half marathon. Like I want my first one to be the half marathon, 13 miles. Like, because I don't want to go into it and experience not taking nothing away from the 5K, but I feel like if I get in enough shape to do the 5K, I have in enough shape to do the 13 miles.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to complete better than half of the tasks. You know, because at that point, if I can complete better than half of the challenges, I think I'm in well enough shape to do it.
Yeah.
And you can do anything. You can do anything for an hour. You know what I mean? So like you can run. The running part, I'm not worried about. It's the challenges. It's the climbing the walls, the ropes, all that. I just don't have the upper body strength, and my body weight's not low enough to do it. You know what I mean? So, but that's something I really want to do.
I disagree completely. It's something that I really don't want to do. But
I have a feeling you're going to change your mind after you do it.
We'll see. But I regardless of which one I do, I'm going to have to kind of upregulate my training to a degree now to kind of pre-plan for this. I only have a couple weeks. Yeah, and it's not going to be – I'm not going to be able to, build Rome in a day, so to speak. It's not going to be much progression that I'm going to be able to make within that short time frame, but any progression I can make from now until whenever it is X amount of weeks is going to be well served because I'm going to need every bit of improvement that I can make.
I'm excited. I'm jealous and excited all at the same time.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Like I said, that's just how Josh is. He's an absolute extremist, and sometimes I think that his lack of a sense of reality is what's awesome about him.
I agree.
Because you're not going to be a world champion and a world record holder and one of the best to ever live at anything if you do things in moderation with a sense of realism.
You took the word realism off the tip of my tongue. I was going to say, if you're like a realist all the time, you can't be extraordinary.
Yeah. And I wonder if sometimes, not that I'm giving myself credit for being intelligent or saying that I am, but I feel like to some degree, I wonder if there's a point where intelligence can become your biggest enemy because you understand things. Like, take this, for example. I understand how the body works. I understand how my body works. I understand the potential for setting myself back with, a possibility of an injury or whatever. So I wonder if maybe my intelligence is restricting my growth because not necessarily an overthinking type of situation, but just the fact that I'm realistic about what could possibly happen and what my abilities are, so that I never set goals that are lofty enough to push me as far as I could go.
Well, I think we've talked about this before, actually, in a roundabout way. And I think the answer is maybe yes, because, like, remember when it was you that brought it up, but when we talked about technology and all the training methods being right at the tip of our fingers, searching, you don't have to touch it now. You can just tell your phone to do it.
Yeah.
And it does it for you. Like there's no work involved in learning different training methods and ideas. So you can physically change your training every single day if you want. So 50 years ago, you didn't have that. So as humans, as people training, we're smarter today, and there's less, superhumans. You know what I mean? Like there's less people that are extraordinary, like in each sport, if you ask me. You know what I mean? Like, because there was always standouts. When I was a kid, there would be select standouts, and now there's the standout is the standard. You know what I mean? So like now there's not really any standouts. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because your intelligence level is so high, you probably do restrict yourself some.
I've always wondered that as of late, at least, because I just feel like if you have a sense of realism, because I look at case studies or examples that I'm familiar with. So I look at the people that I know well, that are successful, and I'd like to consider myself successful to a degree. So I don't want to just use success as an umbrella term, but people that are extremely successful, more successful than I am. I'll just put it like that. Anybody who's above me. And the ones that are the highest level above me don't have any restriction on the realistic cap. Like they don't put that, they don't cap anything. There's no sense of realism with anything they do. And there's always a solution to every problem if you want to fix the problem well enough or bad enough. So like for me, if I want to do this Spartan race, there's going to be a solution to it. There's going to be a solution mentally where I can overcome it and just be able to flip that switch in my brain. Or, maybe I do this one and then I enjoy them and I continue to get better times or whatever it is. So I feel like there's never really that sense of reality in some of those ultra successful people's minds. And you wonder if that's one of those best fit lines that we can draw. Because we always talk about the purpose of the podcast is to find successful people and find out what makes them successful so then we can give that knowledge to ourselves and give it to our listeners and other people. Maybe that's one of the cornerstones of it. Maybe you have to be unrealistic at times.
Right.
Because maybe being too realistic about things just restricts you and restricts your growth.
And I think that's something like, early on in my journey I did was I set extraordinarily high unrealistic goals. And in the beginning, it really helped because it gave me something huge to aim for and shoot for. But I kind of restricted myself when I started to gain knowledge faster than progress, right? And realized that they were unrealistic goals. Because I never believed that they were unrealistic at first.
Because you didn't know any better.
Right.
Yeah.
So like when I said on air to our listeners that in less than a year I was going to do an Ironman from 500 pounds, like I thought that was real. You know what I mean? Like, but come on, let's be serious.
And when you didn't achieve it, though, you lost 226 pounds in 1 year.
Right.
So
it was like stacking the deck.
Kind of what's the saying about, shooting for the stars or whatever. The saying is something about, aim high because even if you fail, you'll land amongst the stars.
Right.
Whatever it is. I'm doing it a big disservice now because I can't even remember the quote. But essentially the purpose of it is to say, set your goals very, 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 borderline unrealistically high because even if you don't achieve them, you're going to be further along than if you set a realistic goal.
Right. The problem with me, people like with my personality doing that is you do yourself such a disservice because you get attached to the goal.
And then it's perceived failure.
Yeah, emotionally attached to the goal. It's not perceived. I failed. You know what I mean? In my brain. You know what I mean? That's how my brain ticks. Like, because if I tell everybody and I say something that I'm going to do something, I know I'm a failure because I didn't hold up my end of the bargain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I hate it. I hate it so bad. And I love it at the same time. Like, because I have a coworker I didn't know listened to our podcast. Came up to me about 4 months ago and says, "Hey man, did you really do an Ironman?" And I had to tell him no. But I had a laundry list of reasons why, and I hated that I had excuses to give.
And all of those excuses were probably realistic.
They were all 100% realistic.
Yeah.
But I had them. I hate having any excuses because, like, to kind of plug you a little bit here, the no excuse nation thing. Like, not having excuses, right? Like, I bought into that. Like, when I first met you and understood what that means, and it does. We don't have an excuse, but there is certain times there is some. Physical limitations or what have you. But yeah. So that's like a whole nother episode we could talk about.
Sure.
Really. Like just having like realistic expectations of yourself, but don't always be a realist.
Yeah. There's times when you can take away that intelligence or that knowledge and just understand when to push.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a good place to close up shop. I think
so.
that I kind of am manifesting this in the universe now because I'm telling more people than myself that the Spartan race is upcoming. I don't know. I forget the exact date that he told me, but he's been blowing up my phone ever since Thursday about it. I don't know exactly the date of it, but barring any obligations, like I mentioned earlier, that could possibly fall on that date, we're going to do it. So I think that that's something to look forward to. And then he, of course, said, "Oh, it's a great opportunity for you to do this," and then share it on the podcast. So Justin just brought it up on his phone. It says,
it looks like June 5th and 6th.
June 5th and June 6th. So if there's anybody out there that's listening that wants to come and drive an ambulance next to me in case the inevitable happens where I either, have a myocardial infarction or need a respirator or something, I would be more than happy for your support. Speaking of support, Justin, we've come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast. This has been episode 77, and we appreciate our listeners' support every single week. We do regularly check the number of downloads that we get, and it's very, very overwhelming.
It's crazy.
Every single month. So we appreciate you guys. We love you guys, and hopefully we will hear back from you next week.
Unbreakable, unstoppable, I'm pushed to the edge and